Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stream Dialogue. So, the government of Mali, the military of Mali, have mobilized its resources to supply fuel across the nation. So, if you watch my previous video on the fuel situation in Mali, we know this thing was building up. A few months ago, I repeat it, Algeria banned fuel from transporting to its territory to the northern part of Mali. And if you don't know, guys, and if you don't know, northern Mali is really underdeveloped by the so-called democratic leaders. By the so-called democratic leaders who was there and let the country be got override by mercenaries and so forth, loot the country's resources. Its army was weakened. But anyway, we know this was being built up, and this was a strategy because militarily they failed. What are they? Why are they having their have this fuel crisis? They want this fuel crisis. They want the population to rise up. They want the population to rise up to protest against the government because that's the only way, through popular uprising. That's the only way they can overthrow the revolutionary government. But I don't know what Kool-Aid people like people in France are drinking. Okay, no revolutionary government, not to my knowledge, has been overthrown through a popular revolution. Through a popular, how can a revolution be overthrown by a popular revolution? Makes no sense. But ladies and gentlemen, the government of Mali has shown itself to be very dynamic. It can solve the problem. The government doesn't really make a lot of noise. Um, Fuel is being supplied throughout the territory of Mali. Cities are being refueled without without incidents. Surprisingly, the attacks on the fuel tankers have decreased dramatically. You don't see videos coming out anymore. And if you see videos, those are old videos of tankers being burned, fuel being burned, and so forth. But also the population, there's a little bit of panic in the population. If you hear that something is scarce, even though you have a full tank of gas, which you normally keep your tank full, you're going to want to go and fill something else, like a few barrels of gas. So you have it in reserve. So that is another thing that is causing, longer lines at the gas station. So that is part of the psychological warfare of the imperialists. Put it in their media. Yes, there's a fuel shortage. Put it in the media that is complete panic. A lot of countries are telling their citizens to leave the country, insecurity and so forth. That is part of the psychological warfare. But I think the majority of the population have seen through this game that the imperialists are trying to play. And yes, they have failed. But Mali was targeted because Mali, of course, in, import almost 100% of its fuel need. But also, we see Russia stepped up. Niger also, who has a oil refinery, who have oil, are sending fuel to Mali. But this problem is, you don't hear as much noise about it in Western media anymore. I think they moved to something else. Maybe they moved to Burkina Faso with another strategy. We don't know. Maybe they moved to Niger with another strategy. They can't starve Niger from oil or gas fuel. They can't do that because Niger has its own uh, oil refinery, has its own gas. Mali has a lot of oil and natural resources, but it's just not developed. There's not oil field in Mali that can, pump its oil and then refine its oil and so forth. Even though Mali's probably have the largest oil reserve in Africa. If you look at this, that's oil that is considered to be under the soil of Mali. The Sahel states are moving. The three chief of staff of the armies of all three countries met in Bamako. I'm sure they're planning something big. I'm sure they're probably coming to the aid of Mali to see what they can do. Because there's a solution at the AES level as well. And, you know, for the time being, I think Mali has to find another supply route or even other sellers rather than buying it from Western Corporation, Western Link Corporation. They can buy from other countries who want to actually sell them the oil, sell them fuel. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. That's the update on the situation in the Sahel, in Mali in particular. Thank you.